"Mom, why can you see my little brother everywhere except in the mirror?" Maddie asked from the bathroom doorway. Rachel Mercer woke with a sharp breath, unsure whether the voice had come from her dream or from the dark hallway outside her childhood bedroom. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:57 in the morning. For several seconds, she lay still beneath the old patchwork quilt, listening to the house settle around her. Wind pressed against the windows. Pipes clicked behind the walls. Then a child whispered, "She forgot me again." Rachel sat up. Maddie had been an only child for 12 years. There was no little brother. There had never been one. Rachel stepped into the hallway, the floorboards cold beneath her bare feet. The house smelled of cardboard boxes, furniture polish, and the faint lavender perfume her mother had worn for as long as Rachel could remember. She and Maddie had returned to Bellwether, Vermont, that afternoon to sort through Evelyn Mercer's belongings after the funeral. Rachel had expected grief to make the rooms feel unfamiliar. She had not expected to hear two children talking in the middle of the night. A pale strip of light stretched from the upstairs bathroom across the hall. Rachel moved toward it slowly. "Maddie." The whispering stopped. Inside the bathroom, Maddie stood before the sink wearing an oversized college sweatshirt and striped pajama pants. Beside her was a boy Rachel had never seen before. He looked about 7 years old. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his faded blue pajamas seemed too thin for the cold October night. One hand rested on the edge of the sink. The other held Maddie's fingers. Rachel's first thought was that someone had broken into the house. Her second was that no lost child should have been standing so calmly under the yellow bathroom light. "Who are you?" she asked. The boy looked hurt rather than frightened. "It is me," he said. Rachel reached for Maddie, but her daughter pulled away. "Mom, stop. Come here right now. You are scaring him." Rachel's eyes shifted to the mirror above the sink. Maddie's reflection stared back at her. Rachel saw herself behind her daughter, pale and tense, one hand gripping the doorframe. The boy stood between them, close enough that his shoulder brushed Maddie's arm. In the mirror, there was only empty space. Rachel blinked and looked again. No shadow, no outline. The glass showed the faded wallpaper behind the place where his reflection should have been. "Maddie," Rachel said quietly, "step away from him." Maddie frowned as though Rachel had said something cruel. "Why?" "Because I do not know who he is." The boy's lower lip trembled. "You do know me." "No, I do not." "Yes, you do." He took one small step forward. In the mirror, the empty space moved with him. "My name is Eli." Rachel forced herself not to look away. "How did you get into this house?" Eli glanced at Maddie, confused. Maddie squeezed his hand. "He came with us." "No, he did not." "Mom, what is wrong with you?" Maddie's voice rose. "He was in the car. He sat next to me the whole way here." Rachel remembered the 6-hour drive from Boston. She remembered Maddie sleeping against the passenger window, the back seat filled with suitcases and boxes. She remembered stopping for coffee near Montpelier. There had been no boy. "Maddie, you do not have a brother." The words seemed to change the room. The light above the mirror flickered once. Eli lowered his head. Maddie stared at Rachel with an expression that made her feel suddenly off balance, as though she were the stranger in the house. "He is my little brother," Maddie said. "He has always been my little brother." "That is not possible. You made him pancakes yesterday." Rachel's mouth went dry. "We were not here yesterday." "Not here. At home." "Maddie, listen to me. You packed his dinosaur backpack. You told me to watch him at the gas station. You got mad because he spilled apple juice in the car." Each detail was delivered with absolute certainty. Eli's eyes filled with tears, but he remained silent. Rachel searched Maddie's face for any sign of a joke, confusion, or fever. She found none. Her daughter looked angry, frightened, and protective. "What does he call me?" Rachel asked. Maddie hesitated. Eli answered for her. "Mom." The word landed harder than it should have. Rachel looked at the mirror again. Her own reflection seemed slightly delayed, as though it had taken an extra heartbeat to turn its head. She stepped backward. "Both of you downstairs." "Why?" Maddie asked. "Now." They followed her into the kitchen. Rachel turned on every light along the way. The old house appeared almost normal beneath the warm glow. Pine cabinets, green tile counters, and a round oak table beneath the window. Then she saw the cups. 3 plastic tumblers stood upside down beside the sink. One purple, one red, and one blue. Each had a name printed across the side in white letters. Rachel, Maddie, Eli. She stared at the blue cup until the letters blurred. Those were not here earlier, she said. Maddie folded her arms. Yes, they were. Rachel opened the nearest cabinet. A small plate decorated with cartoon rockets sat between two ordinary dinner plates. In the pantry, a box of cereal she had never bought was tucked behind the coffee. On the refrigerator, beneath an old bellwether hardware store magnet, hung a crayon drawing of 3 people holding hands. The tall figure had brown hair and a green sweater. The girl beside her wore purple. The little boy wore blue. Above them, in uneven letters, someone had written "My family." Rachel tore the picture down. A date on the back showed it had been drawn 3 weeks earlier, while Evelyn was still alive but fading quickly in hospice care. Where did this come from? Maddie looked at her as though the answer were obvious. Eli drew it. Rachel turned toward the boy. Where are your parents? Eli's face crumpled. You are my mom. Stop saying that. The lights dimmed. Somewhere upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Eli flinched and looked toward the ceiling. We should not be down here, he whispered. Why not? Rachel asked. Because the mirrors are waking up. A soft tapping came from the hallway. 3 slow knocks. Not on the front door, but from inside the wall where Evelyn's antique mirror had hung for as long as Rachel could remember. Rachel stepped toward it despite every instinct telling her not to. The mirror reflected the hall, the staircase, Maddie, and Rachel. Eli stood directly beside them in the room. In the glass, he was absent. Rachel pulled out her phone and opened the camera. Maddie appeared on the screen. Rachel appeared behind her. Between them was a child-shaped distortion, as though the room had forgotten how to show what stood there. She took a picture, then swiped through older photographs. Hundreds of images filled the screen. Maddie at the beach, holding someone's unseen hand. Maddie at Christmas, leaning against an empty chair. Maddie at a birthday table with a second plate and a small blue party hat beside her. In every picture, her daughter smiled at a space shaped exactly like a child. Rachel's thumb stopped on a photograph taken outside their Boston apartment 3 weeks earlier. Maddie stood with one arm curved around an invisible shoulder. On the brick wall behind her, written in faint white chalk, were 4 words Rachel knew had not been there when she took the picture. You brought him home. Rachel stared at the photograph until the words seemed to press through the screen. She did not remember seeing them on the wall. She did not remember Eli standing beside Maddie. She did not remember a blue cup, a rocket plate, or a dinosaur backpack. Yet every object in the kitchen insisted that the boy belonged to her. Where is your backpack? Rachel asked. Eli pointed toward the mudroom. A small green backpack sat beneath Maddie's coat, its fabric printed with orange dinosaurs. Rachel opened it. Inside were 2 child-sized shirts, a coloring book, a toothbrush, and a folded enrollment form from the Boston Public School District. The form listed Elijah Mercer as a 2nd-grade student. Rachel's name appeared under parent or guardian. Her phone number and address were correct. The signature at the bottom looked exactly like hers. This is not possible, she whispered. Maddie stood behind Eli with both hands resting protectively on his shoulders. You keep saying that. Rachel carried the backpack to the table and emptied everything beneath the light. She checked the stitching, the printed labels, and the dates on the school form. Nothing looked newly made. Nothing looked planted. Eli watched her with the silent patience of a child waiting for an adult to remember something important. I need to ask you questions, Rachel said. Both of you will answer separately. Maddie rolled her eyes, but Rachel led her into the living room and told Eli to remain in the kitchen. First, she asked Maddie when Eli had been born. Maddie said April 9th, 7 years earlier. She remembered holding him in a hospital in Cambridge. She remembered that he cried whenever Rachel sang too loudly. She remembered his first day of kindergarten, his fear of thunder, and a small scar near his left eyebrow from falling off a scooter. When Rachel questioned Eli, he gave the same date and many of the same details, but his memories became uncertain whenever she asked about the hospital. He remembered white curtains and a woman crying. He remembered Rachel holding him. He did not remember being a baby. What is the first thing you remember? She asked. Eli looked toward the hallway mirror. Being cold. Where? Somewhere dark. Was Maddie there? No, was I there? His eyes filled with confusion. I could hear you, but you were far away. Maddie stepped into the doorway. Mom, stop treating him like a criminal. Rachel ignored her and took out her phone. I need to see something. She recorded Eli standing beside the kitchen table. On the screen, the chair moved slightly when he rested his hand on it, but the boy himself did not appear. She asked him to lift the blue cup. The cup rose into the air, tilted toward an invisible mouth, and lowered again. Rachel played the recording 3 times. Maddie's face lost some of its anger. "That is not normal," she whispered. "No," Rachel said. "It is not." Rachel called the Bellwether Police Department's non-emergency number. She reported finding an unidentified child inside the house and gave Eli's description. The dispatcher asked to speak with him. Rachel handed Eli the phone. He said his name twice. The dispatcher heard only static. When Rachel placed the call on speaker, a low hum filled the room beneath 3 faint knocks. The dispatcher checked local missing child reports and found no one matching Eli's description. She offered to send an officer, but the line went dead before Rachel could provide the address. Every attempt to call again failed. Her phone displayed full service, yet the calls would not connect. Rachel brought every small mirror she could find into the dining room. A compact from her purse, an oval mirror from Evelyn's bedroom, a shaving mirror from the upstairs cabinet, and a framed mirror from the guest room. She arranged them around Eli at different angles. None reflected him. Even when he stood directly beneath the ceiling light, the glass showed only the room behind him. Rachel moved the mirrors closer until they surrounded him like silent windows. Eli began to tremble. "Please do not do this." "Why?" "They notice when you look too hard." "Who notices?" He shook his head. "I do not know." Rachel placed her phone on the table and activated the voice recorder. "Say your name." "Eli." The sound appeared as a moving line on the screen. Rachel stopped the recording and played it back. Her own breathing filled the room. Maddie's chair creaked. Where Eli had spoken, there was only a faint hum, low and distant, like wind moving through a long tunnel. Rachel pressed play again. This time, beneath the hum, she heard 3 soft knocks. Eli backed away from the table. "We should stop." "Not yet," Rachel said. She pointed toward the nearest mirror. "Tell me why you are not in there." "I do not know." "Tell me why my photographs show an empty space." "I do not know." "Tell me how long you have been with us." Eli looked at Maddie, then at Rachel. "As long as I can remember." "That is not an answer." "It is the only answer I have." Maddie spoke more quietly. "I first saw him in our bathroom mirror 3 weeks ago, after Grandma stopped answering my video calls. He was standing behind me, but when I turned around, he was in the room. He could not remember his name. I called him Eli because it was the name of a character in the book I was reading. The next morning, his name was on a cup in our kitchen, and I remembered him being there forever." Rachel stared at her. "Why did you never tell me?" Maddie looked confused. "I thought you knew." The timing settled into Rachel's mind. Evelyn had still been alive 3 weeks earlier, but barely. Whatever she had held closed for decades had begun to weaken before her death. Rachel stood and began carrying the mirrors into the pantry. "What are you doing?" Maddie asked. "I am taking control of this house." She found towels, blankets, old sheets, and rolls of brown packing paper. She covered the hallway mirror first, then the bathroom mirror, the mirror in Evelyn's bedroom, the small glass panel inside the antique clock, and every reflective surface she could identify. Maddie followed from room to room, arguing that Eli was becoming frightened. Rachel covered the dark television screen and turned framed photographs toward the wall. She placed towels over the glass doors of the china cabinet and taped paper across the microwave door. The more mirrors she covered, the quieter Eli became. By the time Rachel reached the antique mirror in the front hall, his skin looked pale beneath the warm light. "Do not cover that one," he said. "Why not?" "I need one open." "For what?" "To stay here." Rachel paused with a bedsheet in her hands. "What happens if I cover every mirror?" Eli stared at her. "I go back." "Back where?" His voice dropped to a whisper. "Where nobody remembers me." Maddie grabbed Rachel's arm. "You cannot do that. I need to know whether he is telling the truth. He is 7 years old. We do not know what he is." Eli flinched as though the words had reached deeper than Rachel intended. For one moment, guilt weakened her resolve. Then the antique mirror gave a soft click, like a lock opening. Rachel threw the sheet over it. The hallway lights flickered. A gust of cold air swept through the house, although every window was closed. Eli gasped. His outline blurred at the edges. Maddie reached for him, but her hands closed around empty air. The boy vanished without a sound. "Eli!" Maddie screamed. She tore at the sheet, but Rachel held it in place. "Wait. Bring him back. Wait." Silence filled the house. Then something began moving inside the walls. The sound traveled from the kitchen to the living room, slow and searching. Eli's voice rose from behind the wallpaper. Maddie. It came from the ceiling next. Rachel. The voice was farther away now. Please open one. Maddie was crying. He is scared. Rachel pressed her palm against the covered mirror. The glass beneath the sheet was colder than ice. Another voice whispered from the other side, deeper than Eli's and almost too faint to understand. Found him. Eli screamed from somewhere above them. Rachel ripped the sheet away. The mirror flashed white. Eli fell forward onto the hallway rug, coughing and shaking as Maddie dropped beside him. Moisture clouded the glass from within. Slowly, letters appeared in the fog, drawn by an unseen finger. You already gave me one child. The words remained on the glass long after the fog had begun to fade, and Rachel could not stop reading them. Maddie knelt on the hallway rug with both arms around Eli, while the boy pressed his face against her shoulder and refused to look at the mirror. Rachel wanted to ask what the message meant, but the question felt dangerous inside the silent house. She covered the antique mirror again, leaving every other reflective surface hidden, then moved one small mirror from the dining room to the kitchen and placed it face up on the table. Eli stayed close to it while Rachel searched through Evelyn's belongings. Dawn was beginning to gray the windows when she found the first cassette tape in a cardboard box beneath her mother's bed. The label was written in Evelyn's narrow handwriting. For Rachel, after I am gone. Rachel carried an old tape recorder downstairs and set it beside the blue cup. Maddie sat across from Eli, holding his hand. The machine clicked, hissed, and Evelyn's voice filled the kitchen. Rachel, if you are hearing this, then the house has started remembering. The seal began weakening when I became too sick to maintain it. A child may have reached Maddie before my death because blood remembers what the mind is made to forget. He may use a name that feels familiar, but it is not the name he was given. Do not ask the mirrors who he is. Do not say his true name while standing before one. Memory is the door, and names are how it opens. Rachel stopped breathing. Evelyn continued in a tired whisper. I try to keep him safe. I try to keep both of you safe. I am sorry for what? I made you forget. The tape crackled. Evelyn seemed to turn away from the recorder, and for several seconds, only the sound of her breathing remained. Then she said, the antique mirror is the anchor. Every mirror touched by its influence becomes a doorway, but the farther the child moves from the anchor, the weaker he becomes. Do not mistake a reflection for a harmless piece of glass. The recording ended with a sharp click. Rachel rewound it and listened again. Eli stared at the table. Do you know what she meant? Rachel asked. He shook his head. Did you know my mother? I remember her voice. From where? I do not know. Maddie looked toward the covered hallway mirror. She said his true name. Maybe Eli is not really Eli. Rachel stood quickly. Do not guess. Why? Because she warned us not to. She also said you forgot something. Rachel could not answer. She spent the next hour searching the house for more tapes. In the attic, behind a stack of winter blankets, she found a sealed box marked Christmas decorations, although there was nothing festive inside. It contained a child's red sweater, a pair of small snow boots, 3 toy cars, and a silver picture frame with the photograph removed. Each item carried the same faded initial, B. At the bottom lay a wooden ruler marked with pencil lines and dates. Rachel recognized it immediately. Her mother had used it to measure her height against the kitchen doorframe. Yet several marks belonged to someone else. The earliest was labeled age 4. The last was labeled October 17, 1997. Beside it, in Evelyn's handwriting, was a single letter, B. Rachel brought the ruler downstairs. Eli touched the highest mark and whispered, I was almost this tall. Rachel stared at him. How do you know? I remember standing straight because she told me not to lift my heels. Who told you? Eli looked confused. Your mother. A cold pressure tightened around Rachel's chest. She called Arthur Bell, the elderly man who lived 2 houses down. He had been their neighbor throughout her childhood and had attended Evelyn's funeral 3 days earlier. Arthur arrived before 9, wearing a wool coat over plaid pajamas. He listened without interrupting while Rachel described the child, the photographs, and the message on the mirror. She did not mention Evelyn's tape. When she brought Eli into the room, Arthur's face lost its color. I know that boy, he said. Eli stepped closer. What is my name? Arthur opened his mouth, but no sound came. His eyes narrowed with effort. You lived here. I used to see you in the yard with Rachel. You had a red sled. You were afraid of my dog until you learned she only barked at squirrels. He pressed his fingers to his temple. Your name was... The antique clock in the hallway stopped ticking. Arthur winced and sat down. I cannot hold it, he whispered. Every time I get close, it slips away. Was he my brother? Rachel asked. Arthur looked at her with sorrow. Your mother had 2 children. Maddie gripped the back of a chair. Then why does nobody remember him? Arthur glanced toward the covered mirror. Maybe somebody wanted it that way. Before leaving, he told Rachel about the night of October 17, 1997. There had been smoke near the attic window and fire trucks outside the house, but the damage had been minor. A child had disappeared. Search crews had walked the woods for days. Then, strangely, people stopped speaking about him. Newspaper articles vanished from the library files. School records changed. Even Arthur began to wonder whether he had imagined the second Mercer child. Rachel searched the study and found a newspaper clipping hidden inside an old dictionary. The headline described a missing boy, but the center of the article had faded into blank paper. Only 3 details remained readable: 7 years old, last seen at home, and October 17th. Eli sat on the floor nearby, drawing with crayons. When Rachel asked what he was making, he turned the page toward her. It showed a small room filled with mirrors. A boy stood in the center, surrounded by dark, faceless reflections. Beneath the picture, Eli had written 3 uneven letters. B-E-N. Why did you write that? Rachel asked. Eli looked down at the crayon in his hand. I did not. It is right there. I was trying to write Eli. Maddie moved closer. Ben could be part of his real name. Rachel turned toward the kitchen mirror before she could stop herself. Its uncovered surface reflected her face, Maddie's frightened expression, and the empty chair where Eli sat. The name rose in her mind with the force of something breaking through deep water. Benjamin, she whispered. The kitchen lights went out. For 1 second, the mirror showed a different room. Rachel saw herself as an 8-year-old girl standing in the attic beside a smaller boy in a red sweater. He held her hand. He looked exactly like Eli. Then a woman screamed somewhere behind them, and the memory vanished. Rachel fell against the table as the lights returned. Eli stared at her with wide eyes. You remembered me, he said. From beneath every covered mirror in the house came the same slow sound. 3 knocks. The knocks continued through the floorboards beneath Rachel's feet. Maddie moved closer to Eli, but Rachel reached for her daughter and pulled her away. The boy looked wounded by the gesture. You remembered my name, he said. That does not mean I know what you are, Rachel answered. The words sounded cruel, yet fear had already begun arranging every detail into a pattern she did not want to see. Benjamin had disappeared in this house. Eli had appeared as Evelyn's strength failed. Maddie remembered a brother Rachel had never raised. The mirrors refused to show him, while photographs bent around the space he occupied. Whatever stood in the kitchen looked like the child from Rachel's recovered memory, but that did not prove he was the child himself. It only proved that something knew what Benjamin had looked like. Rachel took the drawing from the floor and folded it so the crayon room vanished inside the paper. Maddie, pack a bag, she said. We are leaving. What about Eli? He stays here. Maddie stared at her. You cannot abandon him. I am not taking him anywhere until I understand what happened in this house. Eli lowered his eyes. I cannot leave anyway. Rachel looked at him sharply. You came from Boston with us. I think I did. You either did or you did not. I remember the car, but I do not remember the road. His voice became small. Maybe I only remember what Maddie remembers. I was strongest near her bathroom mirror. After we came here, I started remembering this house. That answer frightened Rachel more than a lie would have. She sent Maddie upstairs and waited until she heard drawers opening before returning to the study. The newspaper clipping had mentioned an attic fire, but the damage she remembered seeing as a child had been near the east wall, where Evelyn kept trunks of winter clothing. Rachel found the old house plans in a filing cabinet. A narrow storage room had once existed behind the attic chimney, yet the current wall showed no door. She carried a flashlight upstairs and pushed aside stacks of boxes until she found a section of paneling that sounded hollow. A thin seam ran from floor to ceiling. With a screwdriver from the basement, she loosened the wooden trim and pulled. The concealed door opened inward with a sigh of stale air. The room beyond was barely 6 feet wide. Dust covered the floor, but the center remained strangely clean, as if someone had stood there recently. Along the walls hung 7 mirrors of different shapes and sizes, all facing inward. Brown sheets covered 6 of them. The 7th was cracked beneath a layer of cloudy glass. Rachel lifted her flashlight and saw a child's red sweater folded on a small chair. Beside it lay a metal lunchbox decorated with faded astronauts and a stack of school papers bearing the name Benjamin Thomas Mercer. Rachel's hands began to shake. One page was a spelling test. Another was a drawing of a family standing outside the house. Evelyn held the hands of 2 children. Rachel recognized herself in the taller figure. The smaller boy wore red. Across the bottom, in a child's handwriting, were the words "Rachel gets mad when mom loves me." A memory struck without warning. Benjamin sat at the kitchen table with a fever while Evelyn pressed a damp cloth to his forehead. 8-year-old Rachel stood in the doorway wearing a paper birthday crown. Candles waited on a cake no one had touched. Rachel remembered shouting that everything was always about him. Then the image dissolved before she could see. What came next? Behind her, a floorboard creaked. Eli stood in the hidden doorway. "You were not supposed to come up here," Rachel said. "Maddie told me you found something." "Where is she?" "Packing." Rachel stepped between him and the mirrors. "Did you know this room was here?" Eli stared at the red sweater. "I dreamed about it." "What happened in the dream?" "You brought me here." "Why?" "You were angry." His gaze drifted toward the cracked mirror. "You said we were going to play a game." Before he could say more, Maddie called from the hallway. Rachel hurried out and shut the hidden door behind her. Maddie stood beside the attic stairs with an overnight bag over one shoulder. "The bathroom mirror moved," she said. "Mirrors do not move." "My reflection did." Rachel followed her downstairs. In the upstairs bathroom, the sheets still covered the glass. Maddie pulled it away. Their reflections appeared normally. Rachel raised one hand. Maddie did the same. Eli stood behind them, absent from the glass. "See?" Rachel asked. "Nothing is moving." Maddie looked uncertain. "It smiled at me." "Your reflection?" "I was not smiling." Eli stepped closer to Maddie. In the mirror, the empty space beside her darkened. Maddie's reflection slowly turned its head toward that darkness, even though Maddie herself remained still. Rachel grabbed her daughter and pulled her back. The reflected Maddie did not move with them. She stayed at the sink, staring toward the place where Eli should have been. Then she lifted one finger and pointed at him. The real Maddie whispered, "Mom, I am not doing that." The reflection smiled. Its lips formed 3 silent words. "He wants your place." Rachel threw the sheet over the glass. Eli backed into the wall. "I do not," he said. "I swear." "You do not even know what you are," Rachel replied. "Neither do you," Maddie said. Rachel turned toward her. "That thing in the mirror warned us. Or it wants you to be afraid of him. We are leaving now." Maddie refused to move unless Eli came with them. Rachel finally agreed to drive as far as the edge of Bellwether and test the limits of the antique mirror's influence. They loaded the car beneath a gray afternoon sky. Eli sat in the back seat beside Maddie, though the rearview mirror showed only her. Rachel drove south through streets lined with bare maple trees. 1 mile from the house, Eli became pale. 2 miles away, his voice weakened until it sounded distant. At 3 miles, near the stone bridge at the edge of Bellwether, Maddie screamed his name as his hand passed through hers. Rachel stopped beside an empty field. Eli vanished. The car's mirrors remained ordinary because they were outside the anchor's reach. In the rearview mirror, Maddie's reflection stayed seated beside an empty space. Then it turned toward Rachel and smiled. The real Maddie began to cry. "Go back," she begged. "Something is taking him." Rachel looked at the road ahead, then at the reflection that was no longer copying her daughter. She understood only one thing with certainty. Whatever had begun in that attic was not finished, and leaving Bellwether would not save Maddie from it. Rachel turned the car around. The road back seemed longer than it had moments earlier, even though the Mercer house stood less than 3 miles away. Bare branches reached across the gray sky. Maddie sat rigidly in the back seat, but her image in the rearview mirror leaned toward the empty place where Eli had disappeared. Rachel adjusted the mirror until she could no longer see it. The instant the car crossed the stone bridge, a small handprint appeared on the fogged rear window. Maddie spun around. Eli was not there, but his voice whispered from somewhere beneath the seat. "I am trying to come back." Rachel pressed harder on the gas. By the time they reached the driveway, the porch light was glowing. Although she remembered turning it off, The front door stood open by 3 inches. Maddie ran inside before Rachel could stop her. "Eli," she called. No answer came from the hallway. Then the blue plastic cup fell from the kitchen counter and rolled across the floor. Eli appeared beside the table one piece at a time, first as a faint outline, then as a pale child clutching his chest. Maddie wrapped her arms around him. Rachel expected relief, but what she felt was dread. The house had returned him too quickly, almost eagerly. "What happened when you vanished?" she asked. Eli looked toward the covered antique mirror. "I was in a hallway with no doors. I could hear both of you, but every time I followed your voices, they moved farther away. Was anyone else there?" "Not anyone I could see." He swallowed. Something kept saying Maddie's name. Maddie tightened her grip on him. Rachel led them into the kitchen and checked her phone. The time was 4:17 in the afternoon. She had 3 missed calls from an unfamiliar Boston number. When she called back, a woman identified herself as an employee of the district enrollment office. "I am returning a call about my daughter," Rachel said. There was a pause. "Which student?" "Madeline Mercer. 7th grade. Papers rustled on the other end. "I do not have a Madeline Mercer enrolled in the district." Rachel stared at Maddie. "She has attended school there for 2 years. Are you certain the student is registered under that name?" "Yes, I am certain. We do have an Elijah Mercer listed in 2nd grade at one of the elementary schools." Rachel ended the call without speaking. Maddie had heard enough. "They forgot me," she said. "No," Rachel answered too quickly. "There is a mistake in the system." She opened the school application on her phone. Maddie's profile was gone. In its place was an account for Elijah Mercer, complete with assignments, teacher comments, and a photograph showing an empty chair beneath a handwritten name tag. Rachel searched her email. Messages about Maddie's science fair, parent conferences, and soccer schedule had vanished. Hundreds of new messages referred to Eli. One thanked Rachel for volunteering at his 2nd grade reading day. Another reminded her to send a jacket because Elijah often complained of being cold. "I did not do any of this," Rachel whispered. Eli moved away from the table. "I do not want her things." "Then why are you taking them?" Rachel asked. Maddie stepped between them. "He is not doing it." "You do not know that." "Neither do you." Rachel opened the refrigerator. A photograph from Maddie's first soccer season had hung beneath a magnet that morning. Now the picture showed Rachel kneeling alone on the field with one arm curved around empty air. The team roster beneath it contained no Maddie Mercer. A blue ribbon from a children's art contest had replaced Maddie's honor roll certificate. Eli stared at the changes with horror. "It is happening faster," he said. "What is happening faster?" Rachel demanded. "The remembering." "Who's remembering?" "Yours." The answer struck her with unexpected force. Every recovered detail about Benjamin had been followed by something disappearing from Maddie's life. Rachel grabbed the cassette recorder and searched Evelyn's box again. Beneath the first tape, hidden under a false cardboard bottom, she found another cassette. Its label read The Exchange. She pushed it into the recorder. Evelyn's voice emerged through a low curtain of static. "Rachel, the mirror does not return what was lost. It rearranges what the world is allowed to remember. One child may stand outside the glass only while another is pushed toward it. The more clearly Benjamin is remembered, the less firmly the other child will exist." Maddie covered her mouth. Eli closed his eyes. Evelyn continued. "He is not choosing this. The mirror is. It feeds on the space between love and guilt. If you force him beyond the anchor's reach, the living child will fade even faster. If you bring him fully back, the exchange will be completed." Rachel stopped the tape. Silence settled over the kitchen. "Benjamin," Maddie said softly. Eli looked at her, and a memory seemed to move through his face. "That was my name." The overhead light dimmed. On the wall beside the pantry, 2 pencil marks appeared where none had been before. One read Benjamin, age 7. The other read Maddie, age 12. As Rachel watched, Maddie's mark began to fade. She rushed to the hallway and tore the sheet from the antique mirror. "Show me how to stop this," she said. The glass reflected Rachel, the staircase, and the empty space where Benjamin stood. Maddie stepped beside her. Her reflection appeared for half a second, pale and trembling. Then it flickered and vanished. Maddie stared into the mirror, but the glass showed only Rachel standing beside an empty place. "Mom," she whispered, "where did I go?" Rachel turned and gripped her daughter's shoulders, forcing herself to memorize every detail of her face. the small freckle beneath her left eye, the uneven strand of brown hair near her cheek, and the tiny silver star in her right ear. She repeated Maddie's name aloud as though sound alone could hold her in the room. Upstairs, drawers began opening. Closet doors creaked. Rachel ran to Maddie's bedroom. Half the clothes were gone. The purple comforter had turned blue. Soccer trophies disappeared from the shelf while she watched, replaced by toy cars and dinosaur books. Maddie's framed photographs changed one after another, leaving empty spaces or images of Rachel standing beside an invisible child. Benjamin stopped in the doorway, crying silently. "I can go back," he said. "I will make it stop." "Your mother said sending you away will make Maddie fade faster," Rachel replied. "Then remember her more than you remember me." Rachel looked at him. "I do not know how." Benjamin stepped into the room and picked up Maddie's journal from the desk. His fingers passed through the cover at first, then closed around it. "Write everything down," he said. "Every memory, every name, every day you spent with her." Maddie opened the journal, but the first pages were already blank. Rachel took a pen and began writing as quickly as she could. Madeline Rose Mercer. Born June 12th. 12 years old. Loves astronomy, peach ice cream, and old mystery novels. Afraid of deep water but pretends not to be. Laughs when she is nervous. Sleeps with the window cracked, even in winter. The ink faded seconds after touching the paper. Maddie watched the words disappear. "It is not enough," she said. From the antique mirror downstairs came 3 slow knocks. Then Evelyn's tape recorder switched on by itself. Through the floorboards, her voice rose one final time. "Before the exchange is complete, the living child will lose 3 things. First, the world will forget her name. Second, the house will forget her place. Third, her own reflection will forget her face." Rachel looked toward the dresser mirror, still covered by a sheet. Beneath the fabric, something moved. Maddie stood perfectly still, but a child-shaped shadow crossed the glass from the other side. Then a voice identical to Maddie's whispered from behind the sheet, "You do not have a daughter." The voice repeated the lie in Maddie's own tone, and Rachel understood that the mirror was no longer trying to frighten her. It was trying to teach her how forgetting sounded. She tore the fabric away. The mirror did not show the room as it was. Instead, it showed a vision of the same bedroom emptied of every person and every sign that anyone had ever lived there. The bed, desk, and closet remained, but Rachel, Maddie, and Benjamin were absent. The mirror was showing them the future it intended to create. Then a small red sweater appeared in the center of the reflected room. Rachel knew it before memory supplied the reason. Benjamin had worn it on the day he disappeared. "Do not say my name again," he whispered. "Every time you do, she loses more." Rachel looked at Maddie, whose outline had grown faint enough that the wallpaper pattern showed through her sleeve. When Rachel blinked, she briefly forgot why the silver star in Maddie's ear mattered. Panic rose inside her. She seized the memory before it vanished. Maddie had chosen those earrings at a small shop near Boston Harbor on her 11th birthday. She had spent 20 minutes deciding between stars and moons. Rachel had bought both pairs because Maddie rarely asked for anything. "I remember you," Rachel said. "I remember everything." But she knew that was not true. There was a locked room inside her mind, and Benjamin's name was the key. Evelyn's warning had not been meant to protect Maddie forever. It had only delayed the moment when Rachel would be forced to open it. She led them downstairs to the antique mirror. The house had grown colder. Frost traced the corners of the windows, although the temperature outside remained several degrees above freezing. The blue cup sat beside the tape recorder, and the words on the hallway glass had disappeared, leaving only Rachel's pale reflection and the empty spaces where the children stood. "If I remember all of it, the exchange may speed up," she said. Benjamin nodded. "It will. Then we need the truth before the mirror takes her completely." Maddie reached for Rachel's hand. Her fingers felt real, but lighter than they should have. "Do it," she said. "I would rather know why this is happening." Rachel faced the glass. Her reflection stared back with the exhausted eyes of a woman who had spent 29 years running from a room she could not remember entering. She placed one hand against the cold surface and said clearly, "Benjamin Thomas Mercer." The mirror flashed white. The hallway vanished. Rachel stood inside a memory of the house as it had been in October of 1997. Orange construction paper leaves hung from the kitchen ceiling. A birthday cake sat untouched on the counter, its frosting beginning to soften. 8-year-old Rachel wore a paper crown decorated with silver stars. She was crying, although no one had noticed. In the living room, Evelyn knelt beside 7-year-old Benjamin, pressing a thermometer beneath his tongue. He looked small beneath a quilt, his cheeks flushed with fever. "The party can wait," Evelyn told Rachel. "Your brother needs me." "It is always him," young Rachel said. Evelyn did not answer. The telephone rang. A pot boiled over on the stove. Benjamin coughed, and every adult in the house turned toward him. Rachel remembered the feeling now. Not hatred. Something smaller and more shameful. The certainty that love was a room with only one chair, and Benjamin was always sitting in it. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and the cake had been covered, Rachel found Benjamin awake on the couch. She told him she knew a game in the attic. He followed because he trusted her. The memory carried Rachel upstairs into the hidden room, where the 7 mirrors faced inward beneath white sheets. Evelyn had forbidden them to enter, but Rachel had discovered the door weeks earlier. She pulled the cover from the largest mirror. The glass was dark, almost black, and their reflections stood much farther away than they should have. "Close your eyes," Rachel told him. "Why?" Benjamin asked. "Because birthday wishes only work if nobody sees. But it is your birthday. Then you have to make the wish for me." He smiled and obeyed. Rachel remembered standing behind him, angry enough to want silence, but too young to understand the weight of words. "Say you wish you had never been born," she told him. Benjamin opened his eyes. "That is not a nice wish." "Then I will say it." The mirror seemed to lean closer. Young Rachel looked at her brother's reflection and whispered, "I wish Benjamin had never been born." The room went silent. Not quiet. Silent, as though sound itself had been removed. Benjamin turned toward her, but his reflection did not move. It remained facing the glass. Then the real boy began to fade. He reached for Rachel and called her name. She grabbed his hands, but they passed through hers like cold air. Within seconds, he was gone. His reflection stayed behind. It pressed both palms against the inside of the mirror and screamed without sound. Rachel ran downstairs for Evelyn. By the time they returned, the room had already begun changing. Benjamin's red sweater was folded on the chair. His toys had become dusty. Family photographs showed only Rachel. Evelyn remembered him because she had heard Rachel speak the wish, but everyone else began forgetting. For 3 days, Evelyn searched the mirrors for a way to bring him back. On the 4th night, the glass answered. It offered an exchange. Benjamin could return if another child took his place. Evelyn refused. She covered every mirror, sealed the attic room, and forced Rachel to repeat a second wish, that she would forget what she had done. The mirror accepted, but not freely. It told Evelyn the debt would remain until someone remembered Benjamin completely. Rachel returned to the present with her hand still pressed against the antique glass. She fell backward, gasping. Benjamin stood beside her, no longer confused. Tears ran down his face. "You left me there," he said. Rachel could barely speak. "I was 8. I called for you." "I know. You heard me for years." Another memory surfaced. Rachel as a child, waking at night to 3 knocks from inside her bedroom mirror. Evelyn moving from room to room, covering every reflective surface before sunrise. Maddie suddenly staggered. Rachel turned. Her daughter's face remained visible, but Rachel could no longer remember the sound of her laugh. She knew Maddie laughed when she was nervous, yet the sound itself was gone. Benjamin looked at the mirror. It is taking her last memories now. The glass darkened, and Evelyn appeared within it, older and tired, recording the final tape. Her image looked directly at Rachel. "The wish was yours," she said, "so only you can end it." Then the reflection changed. Rachel saw 3 figures inside the mirror, Benjamin in his red sweater, Maddie with no face, and herself between them. Beneath their feet, words formed across the glass. "The child who was forgotten may return. The child who is remembered may remain. The one who made the wish must choose who the world keeps." The words remained, and Rachel understood that the mirror wanted a simple answer because simple answers were easier to regret. Benjamin or Maddie, the forgotten child or the living one. It had shaped the choice so carefully that every path seemed to require an innocent person to disappear. Maddie stood beside Rachel, but her outline had grown faint enough that the wallpaper showed through her sleeve. Benjamin looked more solid than he had since appearing in the house. Color had returned to his face. His shadow stretched across the floor. The exchange was nearly complete. Choose, a voice said from inside the mirror. It did not belong to Evelyn, Maddie, or Benjamin. It sounded like many people whispering at once from the far end of a long hallway. Rachel looked at her daughter and tried to hold every detail in her mind. Madeline Rose Mercer, 12 years old, born on June 12th. She loved astronomy, peach ice cream, and mystery novels with worn covers. She slept with the window cracked in winter. She pretended not to fear deep water. Rachel repeated the memories silently, but they slipped away as soon as she formed them. Benjamin stepped toward the glass. "Send me back," he said. "No," Maddie answered. Her voice was weak but clear. "You waited too long already. This is not your debt. It is not yours either." Rachel turned toward the mirror. There has to be another choice. The reflections inside. The glass smiled without moving their mouths. "There is always another choice," the voice said. "The one who made the wish may complete it." Rachel remembered Evelyn's final words. "The wish was yours, so only you can end it." She had assumed that meant choosing between the children. Now she understood that the mirror had been waiting for her to make that assumption. "What happens if I take her place?" Rachel asked. The house became still. Even the wind outside seemed to stop. "Mom," Maddie said, "do not." Benjamin looked at Rachel with sudden fear. "It will keep you." "It kept you," Rachel replied. "And you survived." "I did not live. I waited." Rachel faced him. "Because I left you there. You were a child. So were you." The mirror darkened until Rachel could no longer see the hallway behind her reflection. Shapes gathered within it. Hundreds of human outlines standing shoulder to shoulder, each one separated from a world that had forgotten them. The voice returned. "Your body may remain. Your name may remain. But your reflection will belong to us. Cameras may lose you. Strangers may forget your face. Those who love you will have to remember deliberately." Maddie gripped Rachel's hand. "That is not saving us. That is losing you slowly." Rachel turned toward her daughter. For one terrible second, she could not remember Maddie's name. Then Maddie whispered, "Mom," and the memory returned. Rachel placed both hands around her face. "Listen to me. You are Madeline Rose Mercer. You were born on June 12th after 19 hours of labor, and you were so quiet that I thought something was wrong until you opened your eyes. You hated socks when you were 3. You named every stuffed animal after a planet. You once stayed awake all night because you believed the moon was following our car. I remember you." Maddie began to cry. "Then keep remembering." "I will." Rachel looked at Benjamin. "You are Benjamin Thomas Mercer. You were 7 years old. You wore a red sweater on October 17th, 1997. You trusted me when I did not deserve it. You were afraid of Arthur's dog until you learned she only barked at squirrels. You were not imaginary. You were not a mistake. You were my brother." Benjamin's expression changed, not into forgiveness, but into recognition. For the first time, he looked less like Eli and more like the boy Rachel had lost. The house answered with 3 knocks from every mirror. Rachel pressed her palm against the antique glass. It softened beneath her hand, cold and deep like winter water. "I take back the wish," she said. The voice laughed quietly. "Wishes are not returned." "Then I replace it." "With what?" Rachel looked at both children. "I wish for the world to remember Benjamin without forgetting Maddie. I give my reflection in exchange." The glass pulled at her hand. Her reflection remained still even as Rachel stepped backward. Maddie screamed. Benjamin grabbed Rachel's arm. But the force from the mirror was not dragging her body. It was drawing something invisible from behind her eyes. Memories flickered across the surface. Benjamin on the red sled. Maddie beneath a planetarium ceiling. Evelyn covering mirrors before dawn. Rachel's 8th birthday cake. Boston Harbor. The empty chair in every photograph. The mirror fed on each image, testing which ones Rachel would surrender. "Say their names," she told Maddie. "Say all of our names." Maddie stood beside Benjamin and shouted, "Benjamin Thomas Mercer. Madeline Rose Mercer. Rachel Evelyn Mercer." Rachel's name struck the glass like a bell. Cracks spread across its surface, thin and silver, but the mirror did not break. Rachel's reflection lifted one hand. The real Rachel did not move. The figure inside smiled at her with a tenderness that felt almost convincing. "You will be forgotten," it whispered. "Not by me," Maddie said. "Not by me," Benjamin added. Rachel closed her eyes and pulled her hand free. A sound like 1,000 quiet breaths passed through the house. Every covered mirror dropped its sheet at once. Light filled the hallway. Maddie fell against Rachel, suddenly solid and warm. Upstairs, closet doors opened. Her clothes returned. The purple comforter reappeared. Somewhere in Boston, school records rewrote themselves. Photographs restored her face, and memories returned to the people who had known her. Benjamin stood before the antique mirror. For the first time, his reflection stood with him. The boy in the glass copied every movement perfectly. He touched his cheek, and the reflection did the same. "I am here," he whispered. Rachel turned toward the mirror. Maddie appeared beside Benjamin. The hallway appeared behind them. Rachel saw only empty space where she stood. Her reflection had remained inside, several feet beyond the glass, watching them from a dark room that no longer matched the house. It placed one finger against its lips. Then it smiled as every light in Bellwether went out. The darkness lasted only 11 seconds, but in those 11 seconds Rachel heard the entire house breathing around them. The walls creaked inward. The floor trembled beneath her bare feet. From every uncovered mirror came a soft chorus of voices repeating names that had been lost for years. Then the power returned, and the antique mirror showed only the hallway. Rachel's stolen reflection was gone. Maddie held tightly to her mother while Benjamin stood before the glass, staring at the boy who now stared back at him. He raised one hand. His reflection raised the same hand. He smiled uncertainly, and the child in the mirror smiled with him. "Does this mean I am real?" he asked. Rachel knelt beside him. "You were always real." The answer seemed to settle something inside him. The cold left the hallway. Frost around the windows melted into clear drops, and the smell of dust and old lavender returned. Upstairs, objects shifted into their proper places. Maddie's photographs reappeared on the walls. Her backpack rested beside the front door. Her name returned to the school application on Rachel's phone. At the same time, new images appeared among Evelyn's framed photographs. In one, 8-year-old Rachel stood beside Benjamin in the yard, both wearing winter coats. In another, Benjamin sat on Arthur Bell's porch with a red sled across his knees. The world had remembered him, but it had not changed what had happened. He remained 7 years old. He had not been restored to a body that could grow older. The bargain had returned his name, his memories, and his right to leave the mirror. It had not returned the 29 years taken from him. "What happens now?" Maddie asked. Benjamin looked toward the windows, where the first gray light of morning touched the sky. "I think I was only waiting to be remembered." Rachel felt fear return. "You are not going back into the mirror." "No," he said. "I do not belong there anymore." Arthur Bell arrived shortly after sunrise. He had awakened with Benjamin's name in his mind and driven over without changing out of his house slippers. The moment he saw the boy, tears filled his eyes. "Benjamin Thomas Mercer," he said. "You used to hide my newspapers because you thought the delivery man was a spy." Benjamin laughed, and Arthur laughed with him. Rachel had not heard that laugh since childhood, yet it awakened memories of summer afternoons, scraped knees, and 2 children running through sprinklers behind the house. One by one, memories returned without taking anything from Maddie. The exchange was over. Benjamin walked through the rooms while Rachel and Maddie followed. He touched his old lunchbox, the red sweater, and the pencil marks on the kitchen doorframe. In the attic, he stood before the 7 mirrors without fear. Their surfaces reflected him normally. The dark shapes behind the glass had vanished. "Mom stayed here for a long time," Benjamin said. Rachel understood that he meant Evelyn. "She never stopped trying to bring you home." "I know. I heard her talking to me." "Why did you not answer?" "Sometimes I did." She could only hear the knocks. Rachel closed her eyes. All those years, Evelyn had lived in the same house as the child she could not reach, protecting Rachel from guilt while refusing to trade another life for his. "She should have told me," Rachel said. Benjamin looked at her with a wisdom no 7-year-old should have carried. "You had to remember by yourself, or the mirror would have used her wish instead of yours." They returned downstairs as sunlight entered the front windows. Benjamin stopped in the center of the living room. His outline began to glow at the edges, not brightly, but with the pale warmth of morning reflected on snow. Maddie reached for his hand. "Are you leaving?" "I think so." "Where?" "Somewhere people can remember me without being afraid." Maddie hugged him. Benjamin held her tightly, then turned toward Rachel. For a moment, she saw both versions of him at once. The frightened boy who had followed her into the attic and the quiet child who had survived 29 years of being forgotten. "I am sorry," Rachel said. "I know. I do not expect you to forgive me. I already did. I only needed you to remember why. He stepped forward and wrapped his arms around her. He felt warm, real. When Rachel opened her eyes, she was holding only the red sweater. Benjamin stood several feet away in the antique mirror, but this time his reflection was not trapped. He smiled, raised one hand in farewell, and faded into the growing daylight. By noon, the mirror had become ordinary glass. Rachel could see Maddie, Arthur, the staircase, and every piece of furniture behind her. She could not see herself. They remained in Bellwether for 2 more days. Before listing the house for sale, Rachel hired separate moving companies to remove the 6 smaller attic mirrors and place each one in a different storage facility across Vermont. She did not dare test whether they could be destroyed. The antique mirror was wrapped in heavy canvas and locked inside a climate-controlled storage unit outside Bellwether. Rachel kept the only key. Back in Boston, life appeared to return to normal. Maddie's teachers remembered her. Her friends filled her phone with messages. Every photograph restored her face. Benjamin appeared in Mercer family records again, listed as missing in 1997, although no official explanation could account for why those records had vanished. Rachel's own life became less stable. Cameras sometimes failed to capture her face. Security camera footage showed Maddie walking beside an empty space. Cashiers forgot conversations seconds after speaking with Rachel. New acquaintances introduced themselves twice. Maddie responded by writing everything down. She filled a black notebook with Rachel's favorite songs, the way she drank coffee, the name of every place they had lived, and every memory she feared the mirror might steal. Each morning, she read one page aloud. Rachel listened and pretended she was not afraid. 3 months later, at exactly 2:57 in the morning, Maddie woke to the sound of 3 knocks. Her bedroom mirror had been covered since their return from Vermont, but the cloth now lay folded on the floor. A woman stood in the glass. She had Rachel's face, Rachel's brown hair, and Rachel's tired eyes. She wore the same gray sleep shirt as the real Rachel, who was still asleep in the room across the hall. Maddie stepped closer. The reflection smiled. "You remember me," it whispered. Maddie did not answer. The woman pressed one palm against the inside of the glass. Behind her stretched the endless hallway Benjamin had described, lined with doors that had never existed. From somewhere in the darkness came the voice of a young girl Maddie had never heard before. 3 knocks followed. The reflection raised one finger to its lips, then spoke in Rachel's voice. "Do not wake your mother. She does not know I followed her home."